All right. Welcome, everybody. We're back with Legacy Lattes, episode 4, and I have the wonderful Diane with us. Diane, how are you doing? Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you. I'm great. Thank you for having me.
And just to give the audience a little bit of clarity, what is it that you do?
I am a neurolinguistic practitioner, hypnotherapist, and timeline therapist, and an accredited coach.
Wow, wow, wow. So many amazing titles under your belt. And, today we're going to dive into them just a little bit so you guys can come into Diane's world and, you know, feel intrigued, inspired to not only make a movement in your own industries and feel something about your own stories, but to also have Diane's story come to life in a documentary or an adaptation. So without further ado, let's get started. Diane, the first question I want to know is, what was a key moment early on in your career that made you choose the holistic healing over traditional medicine?
Okay. It would go back to my youth, the experiences that I had in my youth that made me have a fear of doctors in the general sense. And I knew that if I had this fear, it just of an experience that happened to me when I was young, how many other people had this fear too? It equated to in that time and era when it happened of not being heard, not being seen, being invisible, and not being able to have a person that sat across from you that had supposedly had your well-being at the center of the situation didn't. And that led me to being the person that I am, is that people need to be listened to completely. Their total being needs to be addressed. They need to sit in a place of integrity, and that basically started me where, knowing both sides, bridging the holistic and bridging the medical. I think it's is a breakthrough era that we're approaching right now. We're bridging both those sciences together.
Yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. And I mean, it's we're in this weird gap right now with the whole, silencing this person and cancel cultures and all that jazz. And I mean, uh the truth will always come out in the end. And I mean, that's really what we're here for. That's what even the power of documentary filmmaking does. It allows people to speak their truths and bring the truth to light, right?
Absolutely.
And I mean, hearing that, and I know that you've been doing this for quite some time, so how have your beliefs changed over the years, like especially from before and after you embarked on the holistic journey?
Okay. What drew me into the holistic field is what actually happened to me when I was younger. As I said, I'm also a born medium, healer, and psychic. So it's a perfect mesh of the holistic world where I can actually go into sessions with people when they cannot find the answers or they don't know what's going on within themselves. I can actually feel them. So that's the beautiful part of having those gifts. And understanding that coaches or holistic people, that they they delve really deeper. They get to the root of what's wrong with a person. They don't gloss over, okay, well, if you go to a doctor and you have a sore throat, the doctor just treats the sore throat because that's what medically is in a textbook, and they follow the textbook.
Hmm.
As a holistic practitioner, well, I know that when a person comes across to me and they're having symptoms of a disease, a cold, whatever it is, I know that's a manifestation of an emotional issue, event, or occurrence that happens somewhere in their timeline, and that's where I go deep. Either they will, I it's something that is presently affecting them, which would be the trigger. And if we can't find it there, then I will do either a past regression, generational regression, and I could use timeline therapy, whatever whatever the client feels comfortable with me doing in my modalities. We can go back and actually find the root of what caused maybe the anger issue that this person, his whole life or her whole life, she was carrying. And she has, just bad relationships. He has bad relationships with his coworkers, within his personal life and his professional life. There's always a root to everything that happens in a person's being. And if it's not healed, it just keeps getting triggered over and over and over again. And when it's totally ignored, then that's when it manifests into the body as an illness, cancer to immune disorders, to a simple cold, to anxiety, panic, anything that anyone experienced, which is a scientific fact. Emotional distress or repressed emotions that aren't healed do manifest into an illness in a human body.
Wow. Wow. That's so I mean, like I kind of took that as like the symptom is almost like the surface level, but it could kind of stem from just, deeper underlying issues. So it's like, yeah, you might have a sore throat, but the sore throat comes from something way deeper. Is that correct?
Yes, it's because we have energy bodies, and I know people know the 7 energy bodies, which they call the chakras.
Okay.
But there's more to your auric field. There's, your intelligence, and as the auric field just builds, and that's the connection with, there's many, many chakras. So when you have an energy block somewhere in your body, it's going to, if you had an argument with someone and you couldn't speak back or you felt intimidated, so you're going to get a sore throat. So when someone tells me that they constantly have communication issues, or they can't speak their truth, or they're afraid to speak, I know that they complain. They don't even have to tell me they have sore throats. As soon as they tell me that, I ask them, "Do you have a lot of sore throats?" And they go, "Yes." And then I know that in the throat chakra, that energy is blocked.
Hmm. Very, very interesting. And let's bring it back a little further. When did you know that you wanted to like do this, and I get, and like when did you kind of get that first feeling that you had these, gifts and skills and whatnot? What paint that picture. What was that like during that time?
Oh gosh. Okay. Well, I call it my re-remembrance. Um, when I was 4.5, I'll go 4.5. This is what started my journey when I had my re-remembrance as I grew older. When I was 4.5, I could hear and feel spirits. That means people that have passed over, my spirit guides, anybody. And I was quite happy child till 4.5, when my parents then sat me down and said, "You can't do this anymore because you're going to attend school when you're 5." So people that are like me, you have this innate knowing, this innate intelligence to know sometimes it's, you just don't speak about it. If you do, it can cause, you can just feel the energy of other people if you speak about it. So knowing that, oh my gosh, here's my parents who love me telling me that I can't be me, well,
Yeah.
then who am I? So I started closing down and I wouldn't eat. So my parents took me to my pediatrician, and he told my parents at 4.5 that I was clinically depressed. So, my parents, as I guess any parent would do, the fear and the concern, well, what do we do? How do we help her? So he said, well, there are no treatments at this age and this time, medication wise, to treat. So the only thing that we could do is give her electric shock treatment.
Hmm.
So, which I had twice and I died. And and when I was put back in the room, right, like I had no memory of it. I just thought, I just went to sleep and I woke up and here I was in this room. So, but what happened is
Wow.
that it was like a freight train. And then after that, from that happening to me, now I could see them. I mean, like all my senses, all my clairs were there except for the taste. And I used to have conversations with this girl. She's still with me today. Her name is Catherine. She was
Hmm.
in the bed next to me. And I remember my mom bringing me these, those huge lollipops. every day. And I'm like, so I'd get out of bed and I'd walk it over to her and I'd say, well, here, here's a lollipop. Don't cry anymore. Your mommy will be here. 4.5. What are you going to say? So,
Right.
the nurses would say, Diane, what are you doing out of that bed? And I'm like, well, Catherine's always crying. How come no one comes to see her? Where's her mommy? And the nurses would look at me like with this strange look, and then not realizing that they didn't see what I saw. But yeah, she's been
Wow.
like with me for like my whole life. And that, so in that time frame, all I knew is that I was sick because I was in the hospital. And then when I was brought home, my parents were really skeptical about putting me in school because they didn't know the stressors and stuff like that, because they believed that I was clinically depressed at 4.5.
Yeah.
And so the only other option that my parents had was that I had a beautiful relationship with my grandma. I went upstate with my grandma, and I lived with my grandparents for the majority of my younger life. And that's when I started to learn, because I would tell my grandma all the time, there's people here. I don't know who they are, but they're here. And then anyway, as I got older, then I started realizing that there was a gap in my life, that I had no recall. And I was like, okay, why me? Why do I have, and what am I supposed to do with this?
Okay.
And that's what started my journey into questioning as I hit my teens. Then I was looking for people that will like me. Then I was finding mentors. And then I realized that, you know, in my journey, I mean, there's so much more, but in my journey, when I hit that age and the why was so important for me, I knew that this was much bigger than me. And you
Oh,
just have that innate knowing. And I said,
right.
okay, well, what do I do with this? What am I supposed to do with this? I don't know. And I was always led and guided to people that would help me on my path to expand my abilities, to understand my abilities, to know how to use them, to understand the universal laws. So it was like a total education that you can't find in books. But I
Right.
was very studious because that was where I hid, because if I stood invisible, people wouldn't ask me questions. So I was
Mhm.
like an avid reader. I was an excellent student, because as long as I was behind that book, no one could talk to me. But yeah, and that's just what led me into knowing that I would never want anyone, the most of their life, to feel invisible, because you didn't understand something, or you didn't understand that world. You didn't ask questions.
Mhm.
And I don't want to say that they didn't know about it, because there was plenty out there about quantum physics. It's not a new thing, but you didn't ask. And that's always what stood in my mind, is you didn't ask the questions. I wasn't a stupid child. I If I was asked the questions, I could have answered. And instead of telling me that it's not true, listen to what I'm saying. And that was the majority of my life, that made me, before I went into corporate America and then into coaching, I realized that this was bigger than me, and I had to step into the world and fulfill my purpose. And that was to help people at whatever level that they were at, because the worst thing that anyone can do is to feel like they're not wanted, or they're invisible and they didn't belong here. And that's what started me into coaching, is that I will always meet a person wherever they're at, and when they leave me, they'll always know that they mattered in life.
Wow. And I mean that's just like you said, that's kind of just like scratching the surface, because you've told me so much more in the DMs.
Wow.
But just to hear it from you today now is like, wow. Like I'm
Mhm.
completely blown away. Would you say that, at that point in time, was that the most challenging time that you faced, or was there like another time that, another challenging time that influenced your personal philosophy?
uh, I would say yes. It was to do with the understanding that, you have this innate knowing. People that are like me will understand what I'm saying. I'm trying to do this so people can understand.
Right.
You have this innate knowing in you. It goes beyond intuition. It's like you have this wisdom that goes beyond your years. And I knew, and I knew this in me, and I have still to today. I have this, oh my gosh, this love in me that I know is not a love of just like between, people or family or partners. It's a love that encompasses so much. It's like I've taken and put my arms out and hugged everybody in the world, and I'm just loving them. I mean, that's how what I feel every single day in my life.
Wow.
And I and when I realized that I had to step into this, the feelings would get so strong, I would really get overwhelmed with it because I still didn't know how to navigate in this world.
Hmm.
So, we had conversations with my grandmother and stuff like that, and I said, I have to understand the human brain, because for me to be able to use what I have to be able to understand how to talk to people
Right.
in this 3D world, I call it. And in this 3D world, people still had fear. People don't want to hear about woo stuff, they call it, because people had their fear. It's the unknown, the fear of the unknown. Well, how could you do this? It's not possible. You're crazy. All these things. And I realized, well, if I know the human brain, I can learn the language,
Hmm.
and by learning the language, I could have communications with people. And then I went into psychology, and then I went into the neurolinguistic field, timeline, and I knew I had all those other modalities, down packed. Anything to do with, just they just were there in my head. They were just like downloaded. That's the best way I can explain it. And I
Yeah.
and I realized that I had to pivot what I had and what the world was ready to accept. And that was another turning point for me. How do I use what God gave me and use it in a way where I could help people, but help people in an understanding way here in this world? And that's when I went into that. So that was like it was a big transition and a pivotal moment for me, is taking what I had, you know, not speaking about it in the corporate world, because that was my first foray into this, corporate world,
Right.
but I could use it to the advantage of making things better for humankind by teaching upper management how to be kind, how to speak to people, um, how to be able to leverage. It's not always about the bottom line. It's still about the human spirit. If you have somebody that's pregnant, well, she can't be doing that job. Okay, maybe we can transition her, which will help your bottom line. We'll put her in this job. So things that business people look past, even though it was there in front, that they would look past it, but they didn't get the human element of that. So that was like a big, those were like pivotal things that helped me really like move up the ladder in corporate America. They used to call me their secret weapon.
Nice, nice. Hey, and that's what we all want to be, right? We all want to be secret weapons in one way, shape, or form. And the last question that I have is, what is the legacy that you're trying to leave behind?
Oh my gosh. I think the simplest thing would be to be kind to people, to be able to love without bounds. It's I pass this on to my children and my grandchildren, and I hope that I pass this on to everybody that comes within my energy field, even just people I meet in the store, is to know that when you're in my presence, that you're deeply loved. Even though I don't know you, I deeply love you because I can see you at your soul. This outside doesn't make a difference to me. It's at your soul that you're so loved, and you so do need to be validated that you're not invisible in this world.
Amazing, amazing. Honestly, thank you so much for coming
Thank
on
you.
here and sharing a part of your story. And for those of you watching, now or at some point in the future, if you want to see this story come to life, if you want to see it in a short film, feature film adaptation, television broadcast, whatever and however, all you got to do is donate using the super thanks feature below, and let's make this story happen. Let's bring everybody together as a community, and all of us leave a piece behind, and feel like we have accomplished something together by having someone else share their story in the best light possible. So Diane, thank you so much for coming on Legacy Lattes today. And if there's anything left that you want to share with the audience, please feel free to leave us with some final remarks.
Know that in the darkest time of your life, or they call it the shadow part, there's always light in that darkness, because there would never be a shadow without light. So know that there's always light within you, no matter whatever is going on in your life, and just follow that light and you'll find your way into the sunshine.
Oh, that is, yeah, that's some powerful stuff right there. That, if you guys go into anything right now, leave with that one piece, that final statement right there, because that is so powerful, and that could literally move mountains, is just by knowing that that little bit of light is in you, and wherever you think it is, find it, it's there. Again, Diane, thank you so much for being on Legacy Lattes. It was a pleasure speaking to you, and we look forward to hopefully bringing this story to life.
Yes. Thank you.
All right, guys. Thank you very much. And until the next episode, just remember, the stories you tell today is the legacy you'll leave tomorrow. Peace out.